Joanne Wilson, and this is Positively Gotham Gal. Real, honest, and meaningful conversations with women entrepreneurs about their approach to life, business, and everything in between.
Thank you for doing this today.
Yeah.
Menopause, it's become a hot topic. No pun intended.
That's right.
I'm seeing so many companies launch it or nonprofits launch it. And you got to think, how come it took this long to talk about menopause?
Yeah, well, the simple answer is probably men.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't necessarily want to start there, but I think that we have been so conditioned to focus on our sexy, desirable, fertile selves that being able to address this change in like an educated, knowledgeable way where we feel comfortable talking about the fact that our bodies are changing and getting older took a very long time, to get to. I mean, not dissimilar from challenges with pregnancy or other issues that we've had along our hormonal journey, right? It's taken time to
Getting
break
your
down
period.
exactly to break down all of those, and that the double whammy of ageism and sexism, which is essentially what is happening in this phase of life, makes it even harder to figure out how to even talk about it. So I think that's part of the reason why.
I'm going to read some Kindra quotes I like.
This should not be like Fight
Oh
Club.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first rule of menopause should be to talk about menopause.
Yes.
This is a good one too. Half the population is going through a shared experience and they are not encouraged to actually share. And that's where Kindra comes in.
That's right.
And it has been ignored by the venture capital industry. I think what's interesting about that is that it's very difficult for people to wrap their arms around a company as that is representing 50% of the women, 50% don't get menopause, obviously, and also a time period. And so, is it a big business or is it a feature of a larger business around healthcare?
Yeah. I think that is very fair. For right now, it is a big business and an important business, and in part because there's no category, right? There hasn't been a menopause category really ever because the only option that you had was something that was prescribed by a doctor. And as you know, 80% of women either don't want to or can't take hormone-based products, which is why our products are
Yes.
estrogen free. So, I think that we have to start with a very menopause specific framework because we don't have a language. Like we don't as women, we don't have a natural language for menopause or a way to necessarily talk about it, when we're having drinks with our friends. So there's so much work to be done around breaking the stereotype and the stigma, but also being educated. That was like for my own journey, right? The big issue was I had no idea, right? I was 48. I had no idea that what I was experiencing in my body was perimenopause. I was really achy. That was my first symptom. And when I finally got to a doctor who could explain to me what was happening, I was like, well, what do you mean? I thought hot flashes, like, I thought that's what menopause was hot flashes, because I didn't know that there are, right, estrogen is the most powerful hormone in your body. And as it
Yep.
begins to deplete, everything can go haywire. Your hair, your skin, women get heart palpitations, they have anxiety. I was incredibly achy, right? Joint pain. And so when you think about the idea that all of these changes can be happening simultaneously and you have no language for it, it makes it even harder to have conversations with women where you feel like you're having a shared experience because, like I thought at the time, it was really just my thing that was happening to me, as opposed to it's part of our collective menopausal journey. It just is that everybody's having their individual experience as they go. So the more we can share and talk with each other about it, the better off we all are.
Right. I mean, I go back and think about when I got my period and how it was like nobody should know, right? You just like, you would bring a handbag to school because you needed to use, be it whatever it is you used. And, everyone would be like, oh my God, she got her period. But then as became a parent and I had daughters, and they were so open and excited for each other and sharing. And I thought, whoa, we have really come far.
Yeah.
This is great to see. But I also think when you read about doctors, when it comes to any kind of medical issue, heart, um, diabetes, you name it, they all just said what men got. Well, that was how women are. And I think that was a lot of the issues that also happened.
Yeah, well, because this would be a thing that men didn't get, right? So you wouldn't necessarily just get the downstream, even at the very least, the downstream research that was done on men that was given as a small percent to women, right, for heart health and things like that. That obviously now we've learned you can't treat it the same, right? It's the experience that women have,
Totally
right?
different.
Totally different. So I think
Totally
this is
different.
right. This is just another aspect of that same thing, except nobody would have been studying it because it didn't happen to men.
Right. It didn't happen to men. I mean, when I went into menopause, I had such horrific hot flashes that it would wake me up at night and I couldn't get back to sleep. And like after a couple of weeks, I was just walking into walls,
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, this is not a long term, how long this is not going to work for me. And even a friend of mine who's 10 years my senior said something to me a long time ago when she was going through it. Oh, just wait. And I thought, well, okay, but we didn't continue the conversation about that she didn't share with me, or even people share with women, like, after you have a baby, you're still bleeding,
Right.
or you still look pregnant when you
Right.
leave the hospital.
Right.
How come no one tells you that?
No one tells you that. I mean, it is shocking how, like, when I had twins, and so when I left the hospital, I was like, "What do you mean? I thought like that was the end." So,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, no one says anything, and so it is. I'm thrilled to see that many women jumping into this arena of A, making it more of a conversation, and B, building businesses around it to help everyone feel better and use their bodies in a better way.
yeah,
Um, so so you're the CEO of Kindra,
I am.
which is a new direct to consumer company, but your career is amazing. And you've done so many interesting things. I mean, at one point you were the CEO of Mattel.
I was the chief content officer of Mattel, not the CEO of Mattel, chief
You were
content
okay, you were chief content, but you were senior vice president of media at
Yep,
NBC. You were at Viacom. Were involved with Rock the Vote.
yep.
Always loved the Rock the Vote. We should still have Rock the
We
Vote.
should.
Um, and so it's more like corporate, that then now you make a jump into a serious startup. So what was the impetus? Just menopause?
Well, maybe. My story is really a reflection of my career story, is a reflection of my life stages,
Mhm.
actually, not intentionally, but just the nature of what it was. So when I worked at Viacom at MTV when I was in my 20s, and I worked on the Hills, to date myself.
I mean, there were some seriously unbelievable people back there. It
Oh
was
yeah.
almost like they've all gone on and just incredible.
It is. It's incredible. I actually have a few great alumni networks. So my first job out of college, I worked in the Clinton White House on healthcare reform, and so that's a great. We all stay in touch. The same thing with the Viacom family, and then when I was at AOL Time Warner, when it was AOL Time Warner, but after that, I was at I went to iVillage, where I was running marketing. And
Wow.
yeah, and that was when I was trying to get pregnant, and there's no better place to have twins than working at iVillage. Honestly, it was the
For
best
sure.
thing that ever happened to me. And then after that, I worked at NBC Universal in a couple of different roles, and when my kids were little, we moved to LA for Mattel, and that was incredible, to be working with Barbie and Hot Wheels. But ultimately, I went back to NBC, and there was this moment when, the moment when they bring you the job that in theory you've been dreaming about all your life. And I came home that night and I said to my husband, I I don't I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work in a big company anymore. I want to work on something I really care about, and I want to make a difference in people's lives, right? My personal passion had always been around access to healthcare, which is, where things started for me in healthcare reform. And I was incredibly lucky because I did, all of this corporate training to like have conversations with people and understand what is out in the world. And I was in my own perimenopause journey, and I happened into this conversation that was happening between M13, which is a big fund in Los Angeles, and Procter and Gamble Ventures. P&G had this small line of product that they wanted to commercialize. And essentially, the three of us joined forces to launch Kindra. So, while it's very unique and we were starting at zero and all of those things are true, that it came with some support mechanisms that you don't always have when you are founding and starting a company, right? I think that's also one of the things that's so interesting to me about not just the journey of Kindra and menopause, but as I meet more and more other female founders, like the different ways that women in particular find their path to startup companies is really fascinating, because it isn't always like I'm a 30-year-old with an idea starting a company, right? Once you're 50, it's a little harder to just jump out of your daily life and say, I'm going to start this thing. And so,
Mhm.
like, I felt very fortunate that my passion for being able to educate and inform and support women on this journey happened to coincide with something that other people were interested in doing too, and that, I could have partners along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer that women entrepreneurs tend to fill voids that are happening in their lives.
Yeah.
And the data points to more women start businesses older.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you're right. If you look at your career, I mean, all the dots sort of connect. And healthcare now has become, particularly with COVID, has been such an important aspect of our lives that we can have it through Zoom, through different ways that it doesn't mean getting up and going to the doctor's office, and making sure that you get the products that are right for you.
Yeah.
And we're all living to be a lot older.
Right. Well, that's a big factor. I mean, I think actually back to your first question about why did we never talk about it? If you think about, right, we're having kids later, we're working longer, we're living longer, you can spend 40% of your life in your state of menopause, essentially, right? Because if it starts in your, early to mid 40s, it's a long time to be on this journey. And I think that, exactly to your point about healthcare being more accessible, I think we're also thinking more about how to be healthy in our daily lives. And I don't know, honestly, whether that's a function of my own, midlife awakening, where I really feel like I have to take care of myself in a different way. And it doesn't always mean that I have to go to the doctor, but it means educating myself about all the choices that I have, to be the healthiest version of myself during this phase, because I'm planning to live to 102 or something like that, just like the
So am
rest of
I.
us. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I read the obituaries every day, and if someone, it's like 80, you're like,
I
ooh,
know.
what happened?
I know.
You
It's
know?
funny. I say that too. I'm like 80, only 80.
Right, exactly. And so as we live longer, I mean, you think about the Elizabethan era,
Yeah,
people lived to be 30, so they
right.
never even went through
That's
menopause,
exactly right.
right? And I agree with you that women, cancer has become an epidemic, and all of the other things that happen to our bodies as we get older. And then you are responsible, if you are willing and up to the task, to make sure that you go to the doctor and you pay attention and you make keeping yourself healthy what you're eating, and everything has become much more open in that regard
Yeah,
with more data,
yeah.
that to keep your body healthy. So at Kindra, how did you come up with the name Kindra? And I like the tagline. It's designed by women for women. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's really kindred spirits, right? I think, when we think about where we get our inner strength, where do I get in my inner strength? It's really from my community, who is mostly women, although there are men and all, right? Everybody is welcome inside of our in Kindra tent. But that it's really that idea of the community spirit that we want to build, and that also we imbue in our corporate culture. Like, we're a very tight community of women. Right now, everyone who works on the business happens to be a woman, and I think that is something that you can feel, whether you're in our extended community or one of our partners and all of that, because we really rely on each other, which is, I think, part of what this phase of life is about too. Is you need to rely on other people more perhaps than you have in other stages, and that's part of what we're trying to achieve.
Well, you're also doing the things that are right of the time too, eco-friendly,
Yes.
the impact on the industry and carbon footprint. I mean, we were talking earlier. I don't know if you've seen the new Sex in the City.
I have read all about it in my social media feed, all spoilers. I got all the spoilers.
Okay, great. Here's the thing. It's terrible. I mean, it is painful to watch, but I will say that, they are so woke
Mm,
in their waking up at 50 years old that it
mm,
is I find the whole thing very, kind of funny on some regards, because I think we're always learning from others, and we're certainly at my age, I'm looking to millennials and
yeah,
others and paying attention to how they're living their lives and thinking about their lives
yeah,
as a different generation.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, my twins are 10, and we just moved from Los Angeles to Connecticut, which is where I grew up. And, it's interesting to watch them in this new environment where they're also bringing the like spirit of California into their school. And for example, the focus on recycling, which obviously in California, I mean, as it should be everywhere, but in California in particular, they're just, even the way we handle our garbage is very specific. And how they have like brought that into the classroom here in a way that is so well received. So I feel like you're exactly right. Watching them find their own way in something that, at first, honestly, I felt like is a hassle, but now I can't imagine, violating my garbage rules. So I am
Absolutely.
awakening in lots of different ways, not just to my body, but also to the things around me.
Well, you launched this in the middle of COVID. So
Yeah.
talk a little about that experience. I mean, we're all sitting in a room together having these conversations. But you had came together with this team of people and said, all right, now we're going. And then bang,
Yeah.
everyone's stuck in their house.
Yeah.
So how did that work?
It was a little clunky. I mean, what was good was that I had gone into it with the intent that I just wanted to hire and bring on partners to the business that were the absolute right, most passionate people. And that I had had a good amount of experience working with virtual teams already, which, was a benefit. And so we hired people from all over, right, our team now is, right, we've got people in New York and Atlanta, in Tennessee, in Boston, in Chicago. And we get together on a quarterly basis, which is really, really, really fun and interesting. And but the most interesting part about it for me, especially in the beginning, was the seamless relationship created between my family and the business, which is obviously not something that had ever happened. So when we really were starting, like as the business began to grow, it was the week that Los Angeles closed. And it was me and the kids, each of us on a folding table in the living room, working side by side. And me thinking, of course,
That's
right,
very
like
cool.
everybody, this is just going to be for 2 weeks, so it'll be fine. So eventually,
Oh,
right,
yes.
right, like I can handle the three of us.
Yeah, this is
Right.
gonna
Yeah,
go
I can
away.
handle this for 2 weeks. It's no problem. But then, the like participate the kids participation in Zoom calls, and and so how for all of us, right, the same, that our families became part of the kindred spirit that we were creating in the company, that is able to continue. And even when we bring new people in, I think that's something where we're really trying, like, this is a very different opportunity to build culture in a way that I've never had, especially not in corporate life, that allows for your life and your work to not have to be balanced, but to be, right, intermingled in a way that creates a new kind of balance.
Mhm. Well, what's interesting, and you raised, what,
Yeah,
$4.5 million, which is pretty significant, and I mean, I could point to so many women that I feel broke that ceiling and made it easier for the women that are raising money
definitely.
now. And regardless of the success in their companies, they've changed people's attitudes around businesses that they might not need or use, who are sitting on the other side of the table, aka
Right.
men. So how was that in regards to raising capital? So some of it came from lists,
M13. Yeah. So yeah, so
M13.
the round we did was a new round. And what was interesting is that I focused on female-led funds because of the nature of my business, but also because I really wanted, right, I wanted partners who I felt had other companies in their portfolio that I would be able to find like-minded companies, right, that I'd be able to learn from.
Mhm.
Because one of the aspects of being in the land of venture capital, which honestly I hadn't understood until I started this process, is the amazing ability to meet other founders and learn from other companies, and how generous, for the most part, right, how incredibly generous people inside of portfolios are with their time and their spirit to help you get your business, to learn from them, and then in turn to learn from you. And so I was really looking for that when I went into the market, and I was incredibly fortunate to get it. Although there certainly were meetings along the way that I would go, and male investors in particular would say, like, well, we like this, but it really seems like a niche product, right? And so I don't know if you consider something that happens to half the world's population niche. I guess it is. And so, I think also one of the things that we have learned very clearly is that, you know, menopause is the terms of menopause, also defined by a scientific board a long time ago, probably by men, suggests that there are these like boxes of menopause, right? There's a thing called premenopause, which is essentially your whole life up to the moment that your estrogen starts to deplete. Then there's perimenopause, which is the time when everybody theoretically you feel the bulk of the symptoms. And then there's
Right, but you're not
right, and
quite
then
there.
there's the menopause, which is technically only a day, right? The 1 year anniversary of when you stop getting your period, and then immediately you're in postmenopause. The challenge is that when you actually look at women, right, we have this incredible custom quiz on the site that helps you understand where you are in your journey. And what you can see as women are responding to that data is that it's a continuum, right? It's not moments in time, even though it's boxed that way. It is a continuum that can start in your 30s and can go on into your 80s, because there are women who still are getting hot flashes in their 70s and 80s, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
some of the things like vaginal dryness is a thing that starts and then never really goes away. So, right, so there are a lot of aspects of this journey that would suggest that they're like post-menopausal isn't really a thing. It suggests that you're over it, right? You're really just in another phase of your menopausal journey where
You just kinda woke up and realized, "Okay, this is how it's gonna be."
right, right. Although theoretically we are here to help you not feel that way, but it is a new, I mean, no matter what, it's like after you have a baby and you're postpartum, your body's different, right? And after your
Right.
estrogen starts to deplete, your body is different. So our job as women, as it has been since the moment we got our periods, is to adjust to what's happening and do whatever we need to do to continue to feel as great as we can.
So the product that you have now is really for vaginal dryness.
Yeah, our best seller is Vaginal Lotion, which is very similar to a face. It actually works like a face lotion. So, I also say all the time, like, why don't we treat our vaginas as nice as we treat our faces? Because the skin is actually more sensitive than the skin, but it absorbs and it rebuilds the lining and the elasticity of your vaginal tissue, just like your face cream would, right? So you use it over time. So it's great because also it's not sticky and it's not a lube, right? It's like a face cream, but for your vagina. And then we have supplements that help with hot flashes, brain fog, which is a huge issue for a lot of women,
Yes,
and sleep is a
which is a
tremendous thing.
tremendous the number one. Yeah, I mean, the sleep thing is
Yeah,
just
it's
the
the worst. It's
worst.
the worst. So we've worked very hard to figure out, like, it's just a super low dose melatonin in addition to powerful antioxidants that help to diminish night sweats. So essentially, it helps you go to sleep and stay asleep because it also diminishes your body's intent to have a hot flash. But sleep, as if you are a sleep challenged person, is both a physical and a mental game. So there's a lot
Yes.
of behavioral opportunity too that we've been working to share with women around how to help relax themselves. Because one of the things about having a night sweat is that you can actually have a lot of anxiety about going to bed because you're worried that you're going to have night sweats, right? Which
Completely.
exacerbates the whole challenge for you. So we're actually developing some products to help with that as well.
That's very cool. And, what would you say that for you, I mean, you're obviously insanely well versed running the company, but to come from such a completely different background in regards to your
Yeah.
career and to make this jump over the chasm into the, brand new startup world, which is direct to consumer. I mean, yesterday I happened to be uptown and I was like, "Oh, I'm actually wearing a dress this weekend," something I never
Right.
do. So I popped into Bloomingdale's because I was there and I'm never uptown. And I literally had like an anxiety attack in there. I was like, "Oh my God, like, why would anyone ever shop like this anymore? It's horrendous." And it still looks like it did in
Yeah.
1980, and so the finding the customers, and so it's a
Hmm.
whole new world. How has that been? Because we do obviously have more data now, 10 years of people trying this, but it's still, there's more to be done.
Yeah. I mean, the I guess professionally, my passion has always been around understanding people's motivation. And so this is similar, but different. Why do families choose one toy over another? Why do women join or read one article over another? And so, right, or pick a television show or any of the things or advertising, right? So that's always been my kind of intellectual passion for work. And now I get to pair it with my personal passion around being able to give women access to products that actually can help them and that we know are safe and effective and clean and all the things that they should be, but that it makes it easier. I mean, actually, back to your point about women who create businesses that fill voids, because I feel like I don't want women to have the experience that I had, right? I had no information. I had no clue what was going on, right? I went to Dr. Google. Obviously, I was going to die. And then I went to the doctor. And that's the story over and over and over again for many of the women who come to us. So, how do we get to a place where you actually get that education earlier in the process so this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen? I mean, my poor daughter, right, as part of her sex ed, also gets menopause education. So, she knows that while she's going to get her period and she might someday be pregnant, and someday there's going to come this time in the future when your period will end. And it just means it's another transition in your body, but just know that it's out there, right? So at least you don't feel like it snuck up on me, right? That's what a lot of women talk about. I feel like this snuck up on me. And it's just because no one ever told you it was going to happen.
Yeah, and no one discussed it. It was just as you said at the very beginning, it's like, "Oh, I have menopause, I'm getting hot
Right.
flashes." Okay, but guess what? There's all these other things that are gonna happen to your body that nobody seemed to have discussed. And now it's more out there, and I think that women are much more open and transparent about their medical issues or their sex issues or any of those things that they were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, which we could come up with a million different reasons why. And I certainly think that COVID has pushed so many things in such a direction so quickly, and considering it's still going on, we don't really know where this is all
Yeah.
going to end up.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I think that there is some aspect of um, trying to find new ways to connect and reconnect. And when you can be together in person, like the intensity of that experience brings out even more emotion, right? I mean, I think about the first time I saw my like college girlfriends, since COVID, and how like it just felt very like we had so much we had to cover, in the time that we were together to make up for all of that lost time. So I think, and it does bring a lot of these issues to the forefront faster and kind of creates, I think, more pathways to have those conversations, right?
Yes, and it should be a constant open
Yeah.
dialogue. So one
Yeah.
more question for you. What surprised you this year? I mean, you've started a business. What are the silver linings besides sitting along your table with your two daughters, all working in your own little work lives? What is it that really you thought, wow, I really learned a lot about myself this year?
Well, it goes a little bit to that same point, which is my whole life, I have been a big company girl, and I was the office working lady. Like, I loved being in the office. I loved my office. I liked to travel for work. I used to travel all over the world. And so when it came to that moment where there was no option for an office even, right? It just didn't exist. I couldn't go to WeWork. I couldn't do anything. It was very scary, right? In addition to all of these other things that I was trying to get off the ground. But now I can, and it was super uncomfortable. But now I feel like I'm more efficient. Like I get more done. I don't lose all this time getting ready in the morning. I and that I can rely on other people doing the work without having to be with them, right? That I think that's a big part of office culture. I mean, there's obviously the communal part, which I do miss. But from a workflow standpoint, I don't have to have a meeting with people sitting at the table and people sitting all around the edge of the room in order to have a good meeting. We can just get together and be like, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this, you're doing this, see you in 2 days. And then everybody comes back to the table having done the work. And I just feel like we're moving so much faster. And so I don't think I would have known that about myself if I wasn't forced into a position where there was no other option. And then we figured it out. And I do think that's also honestly, an age thing. I feel like my younger colleagues had less trouble transitioning to virtual work than me changing from having people in my office all the time, right? It was just the way that I did it. And I love it, right? I love working from home. I love seeing them when I can see them because I still love being together and collaborating. But it really changed my view of what work has to be effective.
Right. I think that that's absolutely right. That work actually is more effective this way. What we're really missing is the
Yeah.
community, the touch, the feeling, the tapping someone on the shoulder on the way out. Hey, we want to
Yeah.
discuss this, right? Those things are gone from a 5-day work week. But I don't really think we will ever return to a
Yeah.
5-day work week. And I think that's actually good for all of
I do
us.
too. I think that in my wish world, we would be together 2 days a week. Right. That feels
Perfect.
exactly. And that I also think for everybody else, it gives you more freedom also to take care of yourself, because that's
Mhm.
another thing that I also learned, which is I really like not having to get up at 5 a.m. in order to work out. Right? I can work it into my schedule differently for what actually feels like makes me the most powerful versus having to revolve my whole existence around going into this box and then coming home at night, that
Totally. So your work is not 24/7 in some respects. It allows you to have your work and allows you to have your
right,
personal.
exactly.
And you can figure it out in a
Yeah, right,
healthier way.
right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's great what you're doing, and thrilled that you got funded, obviously. And I'm, watching all these menopause organizations take off, and it's
yeah.
about time.
Thank you. Yes, it is about time.
All right. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.